Hello and welcome to the 310 to Left podcast, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. Glad you could join us. Adam Pellerin, and happy to be joined by JP Ricciardi for another episode as we look ahead to the Red Sox road trip, starting with a 3-game set against the San Diego Padres, who loaded up at the trade deadline. They're playing pretty good baseball. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the Red Sox prospects that could help this team potentially down the stretch, including a couple of hot names that just got called up from Double-A Worcester and could help the Red Sox in terms of the pitching department. But we will start with the big news that came before the finale against the Royals, the Roman Anthony contract extension. But before we get to that, JP, I just want to say I've watched your work on Nesson doing Woo Sox games and doing some coverage in studio and the trade deadline show. It's finally nice to have a chance to work with you.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I've been watching you too. I'm a big Bruins fan, so I get to see you there too. So nice to finally work with you.
Yeah, we'll be ramping up our Bruins coverage pretty soon, right? About a month away. And that means that we're hitting the stretch run of the baseball season as well. And the Red Sox are playing some great baseball, which we'll get into a little bit. But let's start off with the big news, the Roman Anthony contract extension. It broke before the game against the Royals, the finale, an 8-year, $130 million contract extension for the 21-year-old with a club option for 2034. You have a number of escalators up there that could get it up to a reported $230 million, a bunch of incentives for the 21-year-old. But I guess we'll just go high level first. What did you think of the deal for both sides?
Well, from the player's side, there's no downside to signing the contract. You're set for life. Not only are you set for life, your generation is set for life. So there's no downside for a player to sign that type of deal. I think it gives him comfort. It gives him stability. Obviously, he could be traded, but if they think he's going to be the player that we think he's going to be, I think the nice thing is from the Red Sox standpoint is they've tied up one of their really, really good young players and set a really good example that they want to keep their homegrown players home. They've identified one of their better ones, and they've got the stability to build their team around him, along with some of the other young kids that they've got coming. So I thought it was a win-win for the organization. Great move by ownership, great move by the front office, and obviously very happy for the kid and his family and the future that he has as a Red Sox.
This has been a trend over the last couple of years for the Red Sox and Craig Breslow locking up some homegrown talent. We'll get into that a little bit later, but we'll stick to Anthony for now. And so I think people look at this contract and, from the player's perspective, they look at this and say, okay, this is the number one prospect in all of baseball. He's 21 years old. $130 million is a lot of money. However, the ceiling is so high for this guy that the belief of some is that he left a lot of money on the table. So was this, sort of a move, not focusing on the future as much for Anthony as it is the present, from a perspective that, hey, man, you left a lot of money on the table here. Why not wait this out a little bit and bet on yourself?
Well, I don't really know how much money he left on the table. He's still going to get – he only gave up 2 years of free agency. And this is what I was alluding to earlier. There's no downside for the player. Think of the things that could happen for him. He signs the contract. He's set for life. If he plays really, really good, he's still going to get another bite at the apple. If he plays really, really bad, he's making a lot of money for a guy who's not a good player. So the downside of this for him is I don't really see the risk that being that great. He's only going to be 29 when he's done. He's still in the prime of his life, prime of his baseball career. He's got another bite at the apple in the sense of getting a big contract. So from the player standpoint, there is absolutely zero downside to this. From the Red Sox standpoint, at some point you have to trust what your evaluation is of players. I've done these type of contracts in the past, not as long as this one is, but tying up young players and getting a year's worth of free agency out of them. You got 2 years of free agency out of Anthony. And what's to say that in the middle of this contract, you can't go to him and bump the contract even longer if you like what you see? So I think it's a win-win for everybody. I don't think he really left a lot of money on the table. That's a lot of risk to go year to year. Look at Trevor Story. I mean, if he went year to year without that big contract, he would be going to arbitration with not a lot of service playing time, and he wasn't going to get the money he got as signing that big deal. So this is a comfort level for the player. It's financial security. Anybody who says that he left money on the table is someone who probably would have signed this contract if it was presented in front of them too.
Yeah, no question. And again, set for life, right? $130 million is nothing to sneeze at. From the team's perspective, you call it a win-win. I agree with you there, but just to play devil's advocate, I mean, he's only 47 games into his major league career, and the thing about where he's playing, right? It's the best place in the world for a player if the team's playing well and the player's playing well. But if they're not and the team's struggling, it can be a really tough place to play. And we've seen in the past that this place is not for everyone. So with that said, is it a bit of a risk, 47 games into a major league career of a 21-year-old, to lock him up for this long?
Well, anything in sports comes with a risk, as you know. I think you have to trust your evaluation of a player. And this is where your baseball people have to come into play. I've seen Anthony since he was in high school. For me, I'm not surprised what he's doing. I've said this, even you can go dig up an Alex Spire article. I think he's going to be one of the greatest Red Sox who's ever played. I think this kid's the sky is the limit for this kid. He's got such a good command of the strike zone. He hits the ball hard the other way, which is a good sign for a young player. The maturation of that player is when he starts pulling the ball. I think, the Jim Rices, the Dwight Evans, the Fred Linds, the great players that have played here, Roman Anthony, the Kyle Yastrzemskis, he is going to fall into that category. Now, you only get one of these guys probably every 10 or 15 years. So they've identified the right one. And if you look at the class of the guys they were talking about, Teal's going to be a nice player, but not as good as Anthony. Meyer's going to be a good player, but not as good as Anthony. Campbell's going to be a good player, but not as good as Anthony. They've identified the cream of the crop. Most organizations don't get these type of guys. They're fortunate enough to get one, and I think the sky's the limit. I think you got a multiple all-star here, and I think you're going to have a guy who hits 280 to 300 with 20 to 30 home runs as he keeps maturing, with 100 RBIs, with a ton of walks, and is going to end up being one of the faces of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He's just been so impressive, and Alex Cora said time and time again, dominating the strike zone, right? I mean, that's so unusual for a young player coming in to do that at the major league level. We've seen players get hot and then fizzle out once pitchers figure it out. But so far, it seems that Anthony's approach hasn't wavered. And not only that, JP, but what's impressed me about him is the fact that, this is not a guy that's batting ninth in the order. I mean, he's leadoff position now. He's hitting 2-3 in the order. I mean, that's just so unusual for a guy of that age.
Well, and I think it shows to his command of the strike zone. If you got a hitter who struggles and he doesn't walk, that guy's going to be in big trouble. But when you got a hitter who's struggling and still can grind out a walk or two in a game, that's the sign of a very mature hitter. And I think this guy, for his age, is so much further along than some of the other guys that we've talked about, and even the younger guys in baseball. I mean, this is a 21-year-old playing like a 28, 29, 7-year, 8-year big league guy.
And from your experience and all the players that you've seen over the years, I mean, what's the comp for Anthony? Is there anybody that that you can think of in your time of the game, that has ascended this quickly and has looked so comfortable so early on?
Well, comp-wise, I've been thinking about him. He's kind of an anomaly because I think he's a combination of a lot of guys. I see a lot of Paul O'Neill, the great hitter with the Yankees. I see a lot of, not defensively, but a lot of Freddie Lynn. I think there's a lot of comps that he's a combination of when you look at him. I think what we're not seeing right now is the power, but that will come because of the way he stays the other way, stays inside the baseball so well, lets the ball travel. Once he learns to pull the ball, I think you're going to have a guy with multiple 20, 25, maybe even 30 home run power. So there's a lot of mixtures that I see with this guy, but all of them are really, really good players. And I think he's going to be Roman Anthony. He's going to carve him. We'll be comparing players to Roman Anthony down the road.
Yeah, it sounds like that's going to be the case, and after he signed the contract and he plays the game, right? And by the way, there was a little bit of a scare, right? Because he got scratched from the lineup before the opening game of the series against the Royals with some mid-back tightness, and they held him out for a couple of games. He's okay. But, he signs the contract and, they have the press conference. I thought it was funny, right? He's out on the field. He's warming up. And then he goes back into the clubhouse. He puts the suit on, goes and does the press conference, and then goes back out into the clubhouse, puts the uniform on, and gets ready to play. Ended up going 0 for 4 on the day. But, what I noticed about Anthony in that game is that he was lifting the ball in the air. He nearly had a home run. But Mike Yastrzemski ended up robbing him at the right field wall. That was a home run in 29 other ballparks, and so you sort of wonder once you see this player develop and we see the power start to come. I mean, the sky's the limit. I agree, and the comp that Alex Bregman had made was Jordan Alvarez, which is a pretty good comp, in terms of the power that we've seen with Alvarez. But actually, that sort of segues nicely into what I wanted to talk about, right? And we'll get to some of the young players that the Red Sox have extended in homegrown talent, and then obviously Garrett Crochet as well, which they extended to a long-term deal. What about Alex Bregman? Bregman signed a 3-year contract. With the opt-out after, this year and next year. If he decides to opt in, he's also got another opt-out. Where do you think the Red Sox are at in terms of trying to get him? And where does he fall in the list of priorities? Obviously they're locking up all these young talent, but he's been so important, for this team. Not only, what he's doing, on the field and at the plate, but in the clubhouse. He's been a mentor. You see him talking to all these young guys. What do you think the Red Sox appetite is to lock him up before he hits free agency?
I personally think he's a must sign for them. I think he's a known commodity. Very seldom can you bring a free agent in and hope that he fits in the clubhouse, hope that you guessed on the right guy. You've got a sample size with this guy. You brought him in. You've seen him all year. You know exactly what he stands for. You know everything he's about. You see the influence he has on top of being a very good player, a right-handed hitter at Fenway Park. So you know the commodity that you have. I think he's a must-sign for the Red Sox if they want to continue going in the direction that they're going. And I think he would be number one priority. If he isn't already priority now, I wouldn't be surprised that they're talking to his representatives right now and trying to do something to be proactive and to show him that, hey, we want to keep you here. All indications I get, he likes it here. He wants to be here. So that's a nice fit. But I really think locking him up and getting that core of 3 or 4 guys in the middle of that lineup that make you a very, very strong lineup, I think is very important. Because if you got to go out in the free agent market, it's just a slippery slope. But now this commodity. I would try to get this guy as soon as possible.
Yeah, a lot of reports have, the Tigers, which, who targeted Bregman in free agency this past offseason, targeting him once again. And obviously the relationship there with A.J. Hinch as well. And, you talk about this Red Sox team and, and it's what I was alluding to with Bregman, addressing the culture, right? And the culture in the clubhouse. And that's why we saw the Rafael Devers trade, right? And in part anyway, because they have all of these young players in the clubhouse. They want to make sure that they have, a good environment for them to grow into. And Alex Bregman's just so important. And so it seems to be such an important piece of that. How important is having, this clubhouse culture? The talent's obviously important, the winning's important, but to have the right culture, how hard, how important is that, and how difficult is that to get?
Well, I think it's a little overrated, to be honest with you.
Really?
I really do. I was in Oakland 88, 89, 90. We went to 3 World Series, and we had some of the biggest hombres you could ever have together. And, when they had chemistry, it was on the field. Off the field, that doesn't bother me. I think that clubhouse chemistry, it's nice to have a good clubhouse, but if you think, you're going to have a bunch of Argyle sock guys in the clubhouse that just want to read poetry and get along, you got the wrong game. So, I bet you the Colorado Rockies have great clubhouse chemistry. They're terrible. So to me, I don't really I want that chemistry on the field. And I see it with this group. What I like about Bregman is he talks to the young kids, but he also talks to the pitchers. And he's telling them what I see, what you're doing, this and that. So I like that type of leadership, and I like that type of chemistry. But I think we get caught up in a good clubhouse. You could have a bunch of great guys, and you could be terrible. So I take talent over the makeup sometimes. And what I think you need to do is have a couple of guys that buck the system a little bit, but when it's game time, they show up.
All right, fair enough. different type of athlete though these days, right? Like that's the only
It is a
counterpoint
different
that
type
I
of
would
athlete,
have, right?
right. But that, to me, goes into the point that I'm trying to stress to you. Because it's a different type of athlete, they come and go. Very few guys stay in one place a long time. You're not talking about the 75, 76, 77 Reds who were together. That lineup was together. That group was together. They'd add a piece here and there. And how do those guys fit in? You're talking interchangeable parts so much in baseball right now. And guys, it's not like it used to be. These guys in the winter, they work out together. They play golf together. They do a lot of things together. So I think there's more known factors today than there was in the past. And that's why I think the clubhouse chemistry, while it's important, it's not as important, I think, as sometimes as we make it out to be.
All right, we'll continue the conversation on the other side. We talked about the Roman Anthony extension. We'll talk about some of the other contract extensions for some of the young players on the Red Sox when we return on 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers.
310 to Left is presented by your New England Ford dealers, who've been taking everyone out to the ball game at Fenway Park for decades. Catch Ford next time you're at Fenway, including in the Ford Clubhouse, a full-service bar perfect for bringing your lineup together and for recording our live edition of 310 to Left. It's all brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling trucks for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, I wanted to be here. It was simple as that. I wanted to be in Boston. Winning in Boston is different, and I haven't won anything yet. But for me, like over these last 2 months, the baseball we're playing, the fans, the way they show up every night, it's amazing. It's a place like no other. And for me, it was simple. I just wanted to be here. I wanted to play baseball in Boston for a long time.
That's Roman Anthony after signing to 8-year extension, $130 million alongside Craig Breslow and Sam Kennedy. Adam Pellerin alongside JP Ricciardi talking about Roman Anthony. I want to get to some of these other players that the Red Sox have locked up long-term, JP. But first, I mean, that doesn't look like a 21-year-old at the podium right there, does it?
No, and that's exactly what we were talking about earlier. I mean, this is a kid that they know. He's a little bit more mature than most 21-year-olds. I've seen this kid play a lot. I've never seen him get so high or so low. He's got a very nice temperament, and that's going to come in handy when you're playing in Boston because it's a tough place to play. But, I've seen a lot of organizations and been a part of a lot of organizations, and there is something special about Boston. I think there's like 6 or 7 organizations in baseball that if you have the opportunity to play there, I just think it's a little different, and I think Boston's one of them, and he's got an amazing opportunity in front of him.
Yeah, it feels different here. No question about it. Being at other ballparks, watching other games, and then obviously when you get to the stretch run in September and October and playoff baseball and Boston is just incredible. But, the Red Sox inking Anthony to that long-term contract extension, and they've done so with a number of different players. We'll talk about that first, but we had Sam Kennedy on the pregame show before the finale against the Royals, and we asked him about having a solid team core moving forward.
Yeah, it's really important. When we've had success here in Boston in our last 2.5 decades, it's been with a core group of guys, typically a homegrown crew, and then complemented with veteran signings, people that have come from other organizations. And that's really, really critical, something we got away from, frankly, over the last 6 or 7 years. And so Craig Breslow came in to take over our baseball operation, and he made that a priority. And he has been incredibly aggressive and bold in acting. We've had some odd timing of deals this year. You mentioned Garrett Crochet and Christian right at around opening day and the extension. It was really interesting. And then the big trade in June, obviously, that seemed to be interesting to people.
Yeah, I think it was of interest. Yep.
And then to sign a long-term extension here in early August, a little bit non-traditional, but I think that is a reflection of Craig Breslow and his sense of urgency, his aggression, if you will, in trying to do everything every single day to make this organization better for the short term and for the long term.
All right, so Sam Kennedy talking about having a core group of players, homegrown talent. And, JP, can't help but think some of the homegrown talent that the Red Sox have let slip away over the years, namely Mookie Betts, number one on everybody's list. And so, the thought is that they've learned their lesson about Betts and they're getting ahead of the game now.
That's a really good point, Adam. And I think, what they're doing is not new to baseball. We did this in Oakland a long time ago with Hudson and Mulder and Zito and those guys. We did it in Toronto. The Braves did it with Acuna and Albies. They got ahead of it. The first baseman they gave a big contract to. So what I think they're doing is, to your point, they have learned their lesson. And the best way to tie these guys up is when they're young and they really have more time in front of them, as opposed to letting Betts and letting Bogarts get down to the end. And I think you saw it in Toronto. It got down to the end with Vlad Guerrero, and it cost them a lot more money than it probably would have cost them if they were proactive in his second year when he had 4 more years of team control. So I think there's a lot of things that you have to tip your hat to the Red Sox, and they're following a blueprint that's been tried and true by other teams, but they're also being aggressive with their young players. And look, the Bayo contract and the Sedan contract, those aren't big money contracts. So basically you bought those guys out a little bit of their free agency and you rewarded them not to have to go to arbitration. It's a leap of faith by the organization, but that's not hundreds of millions of dollars in a contract. That's being very proactive on guys that you said, hey, we like you. We can do this for you. We want to keep you here. And it's an extension of goodwill on their part. The Anthony one obviously is bigger. The Campbell one is a little bigger. Crochet is bigger because he's, came here as a star that you had to sway. But I like the fact that they're doing this and being proactive and not having the gun held to their head, so to speak, as these guys get closer to the end of their contracts.
Yeah, you mentioned the Sedan Rafaela contract. I mean, this is a guy leading the team in WAR right now. We've seen how important he is. Obviously, in center field, he's been playing some second base. The bat has obviously come around as well. But I was watching, MLB Network. Mark DeRosa. We posted this on our social media channels, talking about how much he likes the Roman Anthony deal, much like we've been talking about. It's a great deal for both sides. And locking up a number of these players, but. There's a counterpoint to it as well. And I think that the point was made, well, the Braves had done something similar. And he had said, well, maybe they did too much. And what he was getting at is that you still want players to be hungry, right? You still want players to be hungry in terms of trying to earn that contract. So, that's the counterpoint to the argument of locking up all these guys. How would you respond to that?
We don't live in that day and age anymore. Everybody makes money. Everybody makes money in this game. I mean, the minimum in big leagues is $750,000. That's the minimum. I think the average salary in Major League Baseball is close to $5 million. So you're going to have to pay someone. Like Hyman Roth said, this is the business we chose, and this is the business you're in. So you better spend money if you want to keep these guys, because if you're not going to go out and spend that money, someone else is going to go out and spend that money. And I think what you're seeing now is baseball is so cyclical. Now that the Red Sox are doing this, don't be surprised if the Cubs don't go out and get Pete Crow Armstrong extended. And some of the other really good young players, the Merrill kid in San Diego. What the Red Sox have done is kind of reverted back to what other teams have done with their young players. And like I said, it's going to be interesting to see if some of these other organizations start copying what the Red Sox have now brought back into vogue.
Yeah, you're going to see Jackson Merrill pretty soon. In fact, tonight when the Red Sox take on the Padres. I do want to ask you one more question. And, we talk about all these extensions for all these young players. And the one player that hasn't gotten the extension yet is Marcelo Meyer. He's had a bit of an injury history, in the minor leagues and obviously dealing with a wrist now. Do you think that is part of the reason maybe why there's some hesitancy there?
I think that's a good point. I think Marcelo's going to be a good player. I think they just need him out there for 160 games to see if he can hold up. When young players get hurt early, it does raise a little bit of a red flag. And I'm not, he's a young guy, and I don't think he's injury prone. I just think he got a couple of bad breaks. But I think if I'm the Red Sox and I'm going to make that type of investment, I want to invest in people that are healthy, especially early in their career. So I think if he goes out and has a couple of decent years, you'll see them going forward with him and trying to do something with him as well.
Yeah, the Red Sox are hoping that he can help the team down the stretch. He's received that injection in that wrist, and so he's been working out on the field, hopefully getting to some baseball activities soon. So we'll see what happens there. And so that's one young player that could help the Red Sox down the stretch. But there are a couple of other players that aren't currently on the Red Sox Major League roster that could help them as well. And we will talk about that on the other side when 3:10 to left continues, and it is brought to you by your New England Ford dealers. Welcome back to 3:10 to left. Adam Pellerin and JP Ricciardi back with you. And, I wanted to put a bow on the conversation we were having about the Red Sox philosophy and locking up their young talent. You get the Anthony extension, obviously. That's the most recent one. The CBA expires after the 2026 season. How much is that a motivation to get some of these deals done as well?
I don't really think that's going to have much of an effect on it. I mean, if they come back, the money's still going to be the money. I mean, a lot of that's not going to – money's not going to go down anymore in baseball. I think the collective bargaining agreement, some of the things that they're going to address is what I think is going to come to the forefront is a salary cap. And I think that's where the rubber is going to hit the road. Obviously, the Players Association is not going to want a salary cap. I do think – something has to be done about these teams that don't spend any kind of money to put some type of product on the field and be fair to their fans. So that's where I think you're going to see a lot of the stickling points. But players' salaries, I mean, the players cannot complain about the prices and the salaries that they're making. I think, believe it or not, that won't even come into effect. I think it's all the other things that they're worried about going forward with competitiveness.
Do you think this is the closest that Major League Baseball could come to a salary cap as it has in years past?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure in a lot of ways. And, I mean, maybe someone smarter than me can explain this to me, but I don't understand why there isn't a salary cap, so to speak. I know there is right now with a penalty if you go over, and I could see that, I have no problem with a $400 million payroll if that's what you want to spend, and incrementally you can go up or whatever it is. What I struggle with is there should be a baseline where clubs have to spend at least $150 to $200 million, because I think at that point you're showing your fans you absolutely care. You're going to go out and try to sign better players, and it's going to raise the bar as to what type of players you could possibly get. I mean, you look at what Colorado's doing, you look at what the White Sox are doing. That's hard on your fan base. It's hard to sell that, and you can only say we're going to lose so long and people buy into it. But I think I look at Pittsburgh. They got one of the best pitchers in the game, and who, if he stays healthy, may go down as one of the best pitchers of all time. I mean, you're talking a guy who could be like a Clemens, and they're not able to put anything around that kid. So what's going to happen with them? They're going to get 4 years out of him with 2 years of control. They're going to end up trading him. I just think that's not good business for baseball. It's not good for fan bases in Pittsburgh and the smaller markets. So they're going to have to raise the salaries from the bottom end. And that's going to be the big challenge, I think, when the CBA comes up.
Yeah, and you see the other sports with salary caps, they have a salary cap floor, right? So you got to get above that. And so there's a minimum in terms of spending. You mentioned Paul Skeens, by the way. He finally allowed 7 hits in a game. Do you see that the other day? Finally allowed 7 hits, but still got the win and still, has a 1.94 ERA, which leads all of Major League Baseball. He is unbelievable. Meanwhile, we're talking about some of the other Red Sox prospects that could help this team down the stretch. And, a couple of interesting names recently called up to Worcester on the pitching side. You have Peyton Tolley, who's Red Sox second-round pick out of TCU last year, 6'6", 250 lefty, can hit 98. The velo's gone up. He has, I believe he has 17 games of pro experience, 11 at single A, 6 at double A, and now he's already at triple A. What are your thoughts on Peyton Tolley and his ability to potentially get called up?
I haven't seen Tolley yet in Worcester. I think he's scheduled to start on Sunday. I'm looking forward to seeing him because I've heard so many good things about him. I guess the one question is, why did he get 11 starts in A-ball? If he was that good, he should have jumped right to double A and pitched there because you would have been able to get him to triple A faster. But I hear a lot of good things about him. I'm excited to see him, and I'm excited to be able to evaluate him. I think if he can get 3 or 4 starts in AAA and they feel comfortable enough about him to bring him up, because let's face it, Adam, right now, every game matters. There are no giveaway games anymore. There's no experiment projects. There's no guy, let's see what he can do. Every game matters. You have to give Cora every possible chance to win every game. So if they don't think he's got command and control at that point to pitch in the big league level, then he might not be the guy who comes up. But if he does, then he's going to put himself in a position to possibly help this club. And remember, you can only bring two guys up in September.
Right, exactly. It's not the 40-man roster where you got these makeshift clubhouse lockers, right? Like that, you're sort of now weaving your way through, especially when you're on the road and you get the smaller clubhouses. Yeah. So, Peyton Tolley could be a possibility. I mean, you're right. I mean, this is the not messing around time of year, when it comes to teams in contention. I mean, you saw Jorge Alcala the other night give it up against the Royals. He got DFA'd. So they brought up Isaiah Campbell. Obviously, Justin Slayton's on his way back. You have Peyton Tolley. You have David Sandlin, another guy who the Woo Sox had called up. He's made a couple of appearances, one start, one coming out of the bullpen. And so you're talking about a couple of guys in Tolley and Sandlin who are starters who could make the transition to the bullpen. How difficult is that for maybe a younger pitcher who's never really experienced that before?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I saw Sandlin start in AAA, and then I saw him come out of the bullpen, and he was a totally different guy coming out of the bullpen. And I think it's more the mindset. I think as a starter, the night before you're starting, you have that whole regiment. How do I get ready? How do I come to the park? When do I come to the park? When do I start my stretching? All that stuff. When you go to the bullpen, it's a totally different regiment for those guys. So I think him maybe pitching a couple of weeks out of the pen, he'll get a little bit more adept at it. He's got good stuff, though. I really, really like his slider. His fastball plays. He stays in the zone. He commands the ball. He's not a scattergun guy where the ball's flying all over the place. He might be the one guy that could come out of that pen if he settles into that role a little bit and really help him because there is some juice coming out of that arm with command and control. And he's a two-pitch guy right now. Excellent slider.
Eastern League Pitcher of the Week twice with the Portland Sea Dogs. It was a player that the Red Sox acquired in the John Schreiber trade last year. And John Schreiber, we saw pitch at Fenway Park, actually give it up at Fenway Park as the Red Sox took 2 out of 3. But, keeping with the prospect train, Yostinson Garcia, the password.
Love him.
So that's a player that I don't think, you talk about like going into the season and all the Red Sox prospects. You talked about Meyer and Anthony and Campbell. The password wasn't a name on a lot of people's radar. He is now. What's impressed you about him?
This kid does a lot of good things at the plate. I still think there's some maturation that's going to have to come from him, but that's going to come the more he plays. So here's the things I like about him. He's got great balance in his swing. He can hit the ball pole to pole, power pole to pole. Early in the count, this guy hunts power. He hunts to hit the ball out of the ballpark. With 2 strikes, he's really understands that he's got a 2-strike approach. He's hit a lot of balls with 2 strikes in key situations, up the middle and the other way. He cuts down his swing. He makes adjustments. He's got really good balance within that swing. There's power in there. He's a right-handed bat. And the thing people don't talk about this guy is he's a good defender. He can play center field. He can play right field. He can play left field. He gets excellent jumps on the ball. He's got a little flair to him, a little bit of French pastry to him. He likes to put a little show on when he catches them. But the other night he didn't catch 2 balls, but he got to 2 balls that he had to go a long way for. So the range is there. This guy, I know he's starting to get a little bit of love now, but I think the Myers and the Campbells and the Teals and the Anthonys have taken the limelight away from this kid. This kid's got a chance to be a very, very good player. And I think the Red Sox have options now to trade from their outfield depth. So I am a big Garcia fan. I think he's going to be a very good big league player.
Yeah, that's looking ahead to the offseason, which will be interesting, right? Because the outfield is a position of strength for the Red Sox and could help them in other areas in their roster. But, it should mention, too, the password's taking ground balls at first base, which could be interesting, right?
Not a big fan of that because, once again, you're asking a guy to go play a position he has never played, and now you're going to do it in the big leagues. And I could see something happening where just his lack of experience there costs them a game, whether it's how far do I go to my right? How do I flip the ball to the pitcher covering the bag? How do I make that first to second throw? there's, everybody thinks first base is an easy position to play until you have to put someone over there and it shows up and it costs you a game. So I think the kid has had a great year. I just don't know if putting him at first base at this point is good for the team or good for the kid. But like I said, I love the kid. I think he's going to be a very good player.
Yeah, we saw the Red Sox do that a few years ago with Kyle Schwarber. You remember in the playoffs, and it was a little bit of an adventure over there. But the difference between Schwarber and a guy like the Password is that Schwarber has all of this playoff experience, World Series experience, and that kind of thing isn't going to affect him. The field's not going to affect what he does at the plate. A young player that could be a question mark. And speaking of young players, Christian Campbell. All right, obviously. We talked about guys getting contract extensions. He got one at the beginning of the year. He came out of the gates firing. He was AL Rookie of the Month in April, and then things went south for him. And he got, sent back down to Worcester to try and work things out. He's been playing first base. He was on a 15-game hit streak that just got snapped the other day. Is he a possibility to get called up and play some first? Do you think, or does he need this to stay down there and just kind of hit the reset button before next season?
Well, I think he's playing better now. So if he continues to play the way he's playing going into September, he could possibly be a call-up. I think the one thing in Christian's favor that he's doing now that he wasn't doing earlier is he's hitting the ball to right field more. He's not in that pull mode where he was easily being able to be pitched to because he cheated so early on his front side. His hip would open up, and he would eliminate the outer half of the plate. So you could really pitch to him very easy. You could set him up in and go away soft or go away up. But now he's starting to keep his bat in the zone, and I think he's getting less pull and let the pull be reaction. And so he's made some nice adjustments. I still don't know if it's enough adjustments that he can go up and help the club right now. Obviously, he'll be an option because he's thought of so highly in the organization. But at this point, you want to bring up guys that are going to be able to step in and help you, and you don't want to be holding your breath. And I think they still got a couple more weeks down in August to be able to figure out if he's an option. But I will say this, he is playing better, and I'm happy for the kid.
How careful do you have to be with a young player like that, right? So he starts the year at the major league level, gets the contract extension, gets down to Worcester. Already that's a mental challenge, you would think, right? And just, the affecting the confidence. Hypothetically, you call him back up, if he struggles, you send him back down. I mean, Red Sox are playing for a playoff spot now, and so you can't mess around. And if he struggles up here, if he got called up, he could send him back down. How careful do you have to be with a player like that?
That's actually a good question, and I think the organization knowing his mental makeup is going to help out more than just me as an evaluator sitting in the stand saying, this is what I see. I would be pretty careful because I think there's other. I mean, look they're fifth in Major League Baseball in runs scored. Scoring runs isn't their problem. It's catching the ball and on the mound. And I would put all my resources to as many people I can get up to Boston that can help me not only win that game that day, but then line them up for a series. So I wouldn't worry so much about the offense. I'd be worried more about catching the ball and striking people out. I'm going to throw a name at you that's thrown really, really well. And I believe they got him from Minnesota. Moran, the left-hander. He has pitched outstanding down there. He's got a Bugs Bunny changeup that is just outstanding right now, and he's pitching off the changeup. His velo is 94, 95. I know they got some pretty good left-handers in that pen, but if something happens to one of those guys, keep an eye on this kid because his stuff has been great. His command has been great, and he's got a difference-making pitch right now.
All right, that's a player to keep an eye on. Sticking on the mound, and the player I didn't get to, pitcher I didn't get to earlier, Kyle Harrison, who was part of the Rafael Devers trade, just went 5 innings yesterday for the Woo Sox. What have you seen him in Worcester, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I was with San Francisco when we drafted him, so I got to see a lot of him early in his career. I got to see him in a couple of starts down in Worcester. I think he's trending in the right direction. He's been up and down. Some of his starts have been not so good, and some of his starts have been good. And I think if they can get some consistency from him going into September, he's a possibility too. Now, the one thing you got to keep in mind that they can do in August is they can bring him up for a start, then send him down to the taxi squad, bring somebody else up. So they only have 2 spots to add, but out of those 2 spots, you could turn it into 6 or 7 players. I mean, the other guy to think about to bring total speed to your organization is Eaton. Eaton can flat out fly. In a series where you need some speed, He's a guy that come up. He can pinch run for you. He can play infield. He can play the outfield. He's a good player. So he's the kind of guy in days of old that would definitely be up in September.
Yeah, and that's a player that's already experienced the major league level with the Red Sox this season. All right, we're going to look ahead to the Padres series. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. A couple of good teams going head-to-head as part of the Red Sox 6-game road trip. We'll talk about that next on 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers.
310 to Left is presented by your New England Ford dealers, who've been taking everyone out to the ball game at Fenway Park for decades. Catch Ford next time you're at Fenway, including in the Ford Clubhouse, a full-service bar perfect for bringing your lineup together and for recording our live edition of 310 to Left. It's all brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling trucks for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox.
Welcome back to 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers. Adam and JP back with you. And so the Red Sox homestand finished at 5-1, sweeping aside the Astros, taking 2 out of 3 out of the Royals, and now they got a 6-game road trip. And another challenge for this Red Sox team. They got 3 against the Padres starting tonight. They got another series against the Astros before returning home to take on the Marlins. So, JP, this Padres team really loaded up at the trade deadline. AJ Preller was aggressive once again. The bullpen for the Padres really stands out. Obviously, acquiring Mason Miller as sort of the centerpiece of that bullpen now. What are your thoughts on this Padres team going into the series?
Well, I think AJ did a really good job. He put his team in a position to get better, which I think most of the people at the trading deadline did. I think he moved the needle a little more than maybe some of the other clubs. I mean, I think the key for the Red Sox in this series is not let Miller get to the mound because obviously he's a dominant closer. But it's a team that has pretty good balance in their starting pitching. I think the guys they're all going to face are all quality guys. They're having good years. So they're going to face, 3 of their better pitchers. Offense is surrounded by, Machado and some of the other guys. So this is a nice test for the Red Sox. It's a good team that they're playing. I think in a lot of ways they're very similar to the Red Sox, kind of the same type of balance through the lineup, same type of pitching. They don't have that. I mean, the Red Sox have Crochet, which is the one dominant. San Diego's number one isn't as dominant as Crochet is, but it's going to be a real test. And, I think before the trading deadline, the Red Sox had the hardest schedule going into the second half. I think some trades have loosened that schedule up, but the 2 teams that they're going to face in the next week are definitely teams that did get bigger, better, and stronger. So their iron's going to get tested. But this is what playoff baseball looks like. And always talking about getting the kids experience. This is what it's like on the road, different environment, away from home, and some really good clubs.
Yeah, Alex Cora talked about that prior to the finale against the Royals, getting these young kids acclimated to a playoff type environment away from Fenway Park, and you'll definitely have that in San Diego. And so you got the pitching matchups. Walker Buehler will get the ball tonight, taking on Nick Pivetta. You got Lucas Giolito, Michael King in game 2. Michael King returning from the injured list, had a thoracic nerve issue. It was kind of a innocuous sort of thing where he slept funny, and then all of a sudden he's out for 2 months. So that was kind of crazy. And then Brian Bayo, Dylan Cease in the finale. I want to talk to you about Nick Pivetta and the year that he's having. Obviously, filled a couple of different roles coming out of the pen for the Red Sox, mostly starting in his 4 years here. But he's sort of come out of nowhere and is having this unbelievable year where he's got a 2.73 ERA, 11-2. I believe is the mark. He leads all of Major League Baseball in batting average against, which is kind of crazy. Pivetta is just lighting the world on fire out there.
Well, you think about, look at pitching is the one thing that they're like field goal kickers. Like a guy's terrible in one place, you send him another place, and he's the best kicker in the league. And that's how it is with pitchers sometimes. I've always liked Pivetta's stuff. I think sometimes it's just a byproduct of the environment you're in, and you just can't get to where you want to get because things just don't add up. San Diego's a really nice place to pitch. It's a nice environment. But, he's starting to hit on all cylinders, and he's pitched. This isn't a guy who didn't have good stuff and all of a sudden find good stuff. I think, everything's clicking in. A lot like the Priester kid. Priester struggled here in Boston too, and he's got an opportunity. You could always look back and say, where would we be if we had these 2 guys? but that's just wishful thinking. And I'm happy for Pivetta because he competes and he's got good stuff, and he got an opportunity to just let it shine, and he's taken that step. And Michael King was that kind of guy a couple of years ago, kind of in the bullpen, pitching out of the Yankees, and then got a chance to start and kind of took off. So you really never know with pitching. That's why you see so many organizations continue to, use retreads with these guys and give them opportunities, because you never know when they're going to get it, where they're going to get it, who they're going to connect with, how it's going to click, and if their health comes along. But Pivetta obviously has been the ace over there, and they're going to see him right away. So it'll be a pretty good test for him.
Yeah, and you're talking about things clicking. It hasn't clicked for Walker Buehler in Boston, unfortunately. And last couple of outings, he's walked 8 guys. The command's just not there. Will Middlebrooks was talking to him the other day. And he mentioned this on the post game show as we were looking ahead to the series, saying that Buehler told him that he thought his stuff was really good, but it's just his mechanics are off, and it seems like he's just out of whack. JP, I think the hope for Red Sox fans is that this is a guy with a lot of postseason experience. You're starting to get playoff type of baseball down the stretch. Hopefully he can sort of thrive off of that, figure it out, and give the Red Sox some quality starts.
Well, the one thing I like about Buehler is he's pretty honest. When he tells you, he assesses himself after a game or even before, he's pretty honest about how well he pitched or didn't pitch. And I really believe, I don't have any inside dope on this or anything, but I know what time of the season it is. I think Buehler might have about 3 or 4 more starts left in him, if he even gets that many, before they pull the plug and send him to the pen, because they can't keep giving away opportunities on the mound where the games are so meaningful. So I think hopefully he can get it together. He can get whatever he thinks is out of sync, whether it's mechanics, whatever it is. I mean, he knows better than us, but I think if he's not able to get it right, I could see them bumping him out of the pen. The rotation.
Yeah, the rotation into the bullpen. Lucas Giolito getting the starting game too. He's just been outstanding. 8-2, 3.57 ERA. 11 of his 17 starts, he's gone 6 innings, and he got off to a slow start. Obviously missed the year with the Tommy John, and had the hamstring issue, and I think it's, what is it? After he said, I need to figure it the F out after the start against the Angels. He's got a 2.03 ERA, so he's figured it out, and he's been absolutely huge. He's really the number 2 right now for the Red Sox.
And he's really been like the Pivetta for the Red Sox. As Pivetta's been for the Padres, he kind of came out of nowhere. You were walking on eggshells. Is he going to be healthy enough? I saw a couple of his rehabs in Worcester, and they weren't anything to write home about. But to his credit, I think him and Bailey got together and started pitching a little bit more up in the zone. But this guy has done a great job. He's able to pitch with his fastball now. I think he was really changeup oriented before. Now he's able to match his fastball, breaking ball, and changeup and kind of balance him out. He does have a very good changeup. He's been a very good stabilizing force. And, you want to have a good club, someone's got to come out of nowhere that you didn't expect to do some things. And I think they're getting it from him, some of the bullpen pieces, and obviously Roman Anthony. So this is a good story. I'm happy for Giolito. He's gone through a lot physical. And for him to be able to come back and pitch meaningful baseball this late, I think is a feather to him. And obviously the Red Sox are taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and finally, Brian Bayo on the mound. I mean, he's had similar type of numbers to Giolito since the Red Sox seemingly turned their season around. I mean, think about it. On June 4th, they were 29-34. I mean, the team 5 games under 500. At one point, they were 11.5, 12 games behind the Yankees, and they've really turned things around. And really, this top 3 in the rotation is a huge part of it, right? And Garrett Crochet and Lucas Giolito and Brian Bayo. And the thing that really stands out about Bayo to me is the fact that he may not have his best stuff like he did last time out against the Royals. He didn't have his best stuff, but he figured it out. It's part of the maturation process of a pitcher. If you don't have your best stuff, you grind it out, you figure it out, and you give your team a chance to win.
And if you want to go anywhere in the playoffs, you need 3 starters, and you need 3 guys that take the ball and get you into the 6th or 7th inning. So I think the nice thing about Bayo is, just like you said, he's not a 5-and-fly guy anymore, and barely 5-and-fly. He's actually getting deep into games, and I think that's the maturation of his development. He's not just sitting throwing slider, or sweeper. He's able to establish his fastball in different quadrants of the zone. got a really good changeup, and now he's selectively using his sweeper instead of sitting on the sweeper. And, when you become predictable at the major league level as a pitcher, it's a lot easier for hitters to make adjustments on you. And now he's taking that predictability away because he's ahead in the count and he's able to establish with his fastball. I'm a firm believer that I know some people don't, but I still believe the ability to command and control a fastball is going to give you more of an advantage than ever. And, if you can throw that, I still believe that if the best pitch in baseball is a well-placed fastball, and especially up in the zone with how so many hitters are chasing power. And I think Bayo has done a very good job of getting his 3 pitches in line.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, 2.61 ERA over his last 12 starts. And so you get Buehler, Giolito, and Bayo. And good news from the Red Sox from an injury perspective. Carlos Narvaez, who we did not see over the last, couple of games, he saw a lot more of Connor Wong. He's dealing with a knee issue. Apparently went through a battery of tests, came out okay through that, and he's going to be available for the series against the Padres. So, huge couple of series on the way for the Red Sox, Padres, and then you got the Astros, and man, hitting the stretch run. It's a lot of fun this time of year when your team's in it, isn't it, JP?
That's great. It's nice to pick up not the paper anymore, but look on your phone and check the standings out and see how other teams are playing. And some of the Red Sox schedule, the Marlins were playing so poorly, but now the Marlins are a really good club. So you got them coming in. So there's not a lot of let up coming soon in the schedule. And like you said, it's so much fun this time of year when your team's in the playoffs.
And unfortunately, they already played the Rockies. Saw what the Blue Jays did to the Rockies. They outscored 45-6 and had 63 hits. Yeah, right. They had 63 hits in 3 games. That's to your point earlier about teams. It's like, that's embarrassing.
Listen, as a baseball person, it's sad to see teams that bad. It's almost like they're not trying. I don't understand it. Their run differential is 300 difference. That's like historical. I mean, last year the White Sox set the record for loss. These guys are going to break it in a year. That's not good for our game.
Nope, not good for the game of baseball. Good stuff for the Red Sox, though, because they are in playoff position heading into the series against the Padres. JP, had a lot of fun talking ball with you. Thanks for being on 310 to Left.
Great. Good job, Adam. Appreciate it.
All right, that'll wrap things up for 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers. For JP Ricciardi, I'm Adam Pellerin. We'll see you next time.